Hi, everyone. Today, I want to share a new story with you. Enjoy. The plate hit the wall, just inches from my head. Pieces of it fell to the floor, like falling tears. I said, "Get out." Maria yelled, reaching for another plate. "Anthony runs the place now. We don't need you." I stayed calm, looking at my stepmother's angry face. Behind her, my stepbrother Anthony grinned. He was already wearing my dad's old chef coat, something he had worn for 30 years. Now, it hung loose on Anthony like it didn't belong. My name is Isabella Romano. Until 2 months ago, I was the sous chef at Maros, the Italian restaurant my dad had started from nothing. I worked there for 15 years, beginning as a dishwasher when I was 13, learning everything about cooking and what made our food special. But now my dad was gone, and so was everything I had worked for. "You can't do this," I said, trying to keep calm even though I was angry. "Dad wanted me to run the restaurant. Everyone knows that." Maria laughed, but it wasn't a nice laugh. "Everyone knows? Where's the proof? The will says everything goes to me, and I say Anthony's in charge now. You're fired." I looked past her to Anthony, leaning on the counter like he owned the place. He had shown up 6 months ago, right after Dad got sick. He was Maria's 25-year-old son from her first marriage, and now he suddenly wanted to be part of the family business. "You don't know how to cook," I said to him. "You've never worked a day in this kitchen." He shrugged, adjusting my dad's coat. "I'm a quick learner. How hard can it be? Just follow the recipes, make the food look good, and take the money. Simple." Simple. The word hit me hard. He had no idea what it took to run Maros. The early morning trips to the market to get the best ingredients, the hours of preparation, the family recipes that we kept secret, and the relationships with the suppliers that Dad had built over many years. "The recipes," I said slowly, realizing something. "You think you can just come in and make Dad's food?" Maria's smile started to fade. "Don't be silly. The recipes are right here in the kitchen. We don't need you." "Those aren't the real recipes," I said, feeling a little satisfied as her face turned pale. "Dad never wrote down the real recipes. He taught me how to make them, step by step, over the years. What you have are just the basic versions." "You're lying," Anthony shouted, but I could tell he wasn't sure. "Try making Dad's marinara sauce from those recipe cards," I said. "See if it tastes the same. Or try the tiramisu that won Best Dessert in Chicago 3 years in a row. Good luck making it like Dad did." Maria rushed over, grabbing my arm. "You think you're so smart? We'll figure it out. Now leave my restaurant before I call the cops." I pulled my arm away, standing tall. "Your restaurant? Everything here, every dish, every recipe, every secret that makes this place great, came from my dad. Not you. Your family." Maria's voice was full of anger. "I was his wife. You're just his daughter from his first marriage. I have the papers, the will. Everything. You have nothing." Her words hurt, but I didn't let her see me cry. Instead, I took out my dad's lucky coin, the 1943 steel penny he carried every day since he opened the restaurant. "Dad gave me this the night before he passed away," I said softly. "He told me to keep it safe, that I'd know when to use it. I didn't understand then, but I do now." Maria stared at the coin. "That belongs to the restaurant. Give it to me." I held it tightly in my hand, backing toward the door. "You have the restaurant, Maria, but my dad left me something more valuable than papers or property. When you figure out what that is, you'll know where to find me." I walked out of Maros for the last time, ignoring Maria yelling behind me. The late afternoon sun made the streets of Chicago look golden, just like the thread on my dad's chef coat. Tears came when I reached my car, but I quickly wiped them away. Dad had taught me more than just recipes. He taught me patience, persistence, and planning. Most importantly, he taught me that sometimes you have to lose everything to come back even stronger. I started the car, watching Anthony and Maria argue through the restaurant's front window. They thought they had won, that they had taken everything from me. But Dad's last lesson was still waiting for them, and they had no idea what was coming. 3 months after being kicked out of Maros, I stood in my small apartment kitchen, finishing the last touches. The marinara sauce simmered on the stove, and its smell took me back to all those mornings with my father, learning exactly when to add each ingredient. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Na, my best friend who had worked as a waitress at Maros for 10 years before Maria fired her too. It's bad, Bella, really bad. They lost the Rossini wedding booking. I wasn't surprised. The Rossini family had been loyal customers for 20 years, celebrating everything at Maros. But from Na's updates, it seemed like the restaurant was losing old customers. Anthony's simplified versions of Dad's recipes weren't working. Another text, Maria's desperate. She's trying to hire her way out of it. Third chef this month. I smiled and stirred the sauce. Let them scramble. The timing was perfect. Dad's lucky steel penny sat on my counter next to a worn leather notebook. I'd found it the day after his funeral, just like he'd told me. Inside the notebook were his real recipes, written in his neat handwriting, along with something else, the deed to a small store just 3 blocks from Maros. For my Isabella, the no raid. Sometimes you have to lose a battle to win the war. When the time comes, you'll know what to do. Love, Dad. The store had been empty for years, but Dad had kept paying the rent, quietly planning ahead even when he was sick. Now, after months of hard work and using all my savings, it was almost ready. My phone rang with an unknown number. Isabella Romano. I answered, already knowing who it was. Miss Romano? The voice was smooth, professional. This is James Wheeler from the Chicago Restaurant Association. I'm calling about the nomination. Yes, Mr. Wheeler? The committee has reviewed your application for the Rising Star Chef competition. We're interested in your concept, a modern take on traditional Italian cuisine. I looked around my test kitchen at the recipes I'd spent months adapting and perfecting, Dad's classic dishes with my own twists, keeping the traditions, but adding something new. That's right, I replied. Everything is made from scratch, using techniques passed down through generations. Fascinating, Wheeler said, especially with your background at Maros. I understand there's been some changes in management there recently. You could say that. Well, Miss Romano, the committee would like to invite you to compete. The event is in 6 weeks. The winner, as you know, gets press coverage and investment funding. I tightened my grip on the phone. I'll be there. After hanging up, I picked up Dad's coin, running my finger over its worn surface. The competition would pit me against Chicago's top chefs, but more importantly, it would put me in the spotlight, exactly where I needed to be. My phone buzzed again. You won't believe this. Anthony tried making Dad's OOO for a food critic. Total disaster. The review comes out tomorrow. Perfect timing. The next morning, the Chicago Tribune's harsh review of Maros went viral, a pale imitation of its former glory, the critic wrote. The magic is gone, replaced by mediocrity. I was in my new kitchen when Maria called. We need to talk, she said, her voice tight. About what? The recipes. The real ones. Name your price. I laughed softly. They're not for sale, Maria. Neither is Dad's legacy. Don't be stupid, she snapped. This is business. Everything has a price. Not everything, I replied. But don't worry. You'll be seeing me soon. I hung up and went back to my prep work. The Rising Star competition was 5 weeks away, and I had a point to prove. On the last page of Dad's notebook, he had written, "Success is the best revenge, but timing is everything. Wait until they're desperate, then show them what they threw away." The night of the competition arrived. Chicago's top chefs filled the grand ballroom of the Palmer House. 8 cooking stations were set up, and my station was right across from the judges' table. I tied on my apron, just simple black cotton, with Dad's steel penny now turned into a pin, catching the light. Chef Romano? A judge approached. Your menu concept is interesting, reimagined Italian classics. I nodded, setting up my ingredients. My father's recipes, adapted for modern tastes. Your father? The judge's eyes widened. Marco Romano. Before I could respond, there was a commotion at the entrance. Maria and Anthony burst in, Maria's face red with anger. She can't compete. Maria shouted, pointing at me. Those are our recipes. Our property. The room went silent. Head Judge Wheeler stepped forward. Mrs. Romano, this is a private event. If you have concerns, I have proof. Maria interrupted, holding up a folder. Documents showing I own all rights to Marco's recipes and techniques. I kept prepping, letting her make a scene. Everything was going exactly as planned. Mrs. Romano, Wheeler said firmly, this competition judges original interpretations of classical cuisine. Chef Isabella's menu, while inspired by her father's work, consists of her own creations. Let them stay, I called out, still not looking up. Let them watch. Wheeler hesitated but nodded. Security escorted Maria and Anthony to seats near the judges. Over the next 2 hours, I cooked with the focus I learned from Dad. Each dish was a tribute and a transformation. His marinara sauce, lightened with roasted cherry tomatoes, his osso buco, remade with short ribs and modern plating. When I presented my final course, tiramisu, deconstructed into elegant pieces, I heard gasps from the judges. Even Maria had fallen quiet. This is... Wheeler took another bite, closing his eyes. It's Marco's tiramisu, elevated. Familiar, but completely new. I smiled, touching the penny on my apron. My father taught me that tradition isn't about holding on to the past, it's about moving it forward. The judges talked briefly. Wheeler stood. Ladies and gentlemen, we have our winner, Chef Isabella Romano. The applause was deafening, cameras flashing. I saw Maria and Anthony sneak toward the exit, but I wasn't done. Thank you, I said into the microphone. 3 months ago, I lost my place in my father's kitchen. But he left me something more valuable than a restaurant. He left me his knowledge, his techniques, and his dream of evolution. I turned to face the crowd. That's why I'm proud to announce the opening of Newa Marcos. Not a replacement for the original, but a continuation of his legacy, a place where tradition meets innovation, where the past guides us into the future. The crowd cheered again. Restaurant critics rushed to ask questions about the opening date, and investors handed me their business cards. Later that night, alone in my new restaurant, I raised a glass to Dad's photo. You planned this all along, didn't you? I whispered. Knew they'd push me out. Knew I'd have to make my own way. The next morning, Nina sent one final update. Maria had listed Maros for sale, without the real recipes, without the soul that Dad put into every dish. They couldn't keep it alive. 6 months later, Newa Marcos opened to rave reviews. The lines stretched around the block, old customers mixing with new ones. The steel penny hung above the door, watching over a packed dining room where tradition and innovation danced on every plate. Maria and Anthony disappeared from Chicago's restaurant scene. Last I heard, they moved to Florida to try again. But their failure wasn't my victory. My success was. Dad's notebook sits in my office now, its pages marked with my own notes. Sometimes, late at night, I imagine him watching me in the kitchen, smiling as I teach my own staff how to make marinara sauce, not exactly the way he taught me, but close enough that his legacy lives on. And in the end, that's what he wanted all along. Not for me to preserve the past, but to carry it forward into the future. Every night before service, I touch the steel penny above the door and whisper, "GRY Papa, thank you for teaching me that the greatest revenge isn't destroying what others build. It's building something better of your own." That's a lesson worth more than any recipe.